Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is 2 o'clock. Time for the Inverclyde Live-Stream. But first, a little music. Enjoy.
There once was a good time when we built all the great ships here, but that once time is our lost time now. That is our yesteryear. Sugar cane from Jamaica, put a sweet tooth in every mouth, and the cotton that once was spun here fine was gathered by black hands of the South. Factory girls, topped with scarves, made the sugar, spun the bread, and the tough men who made the great ships great were proud to call themselves red. There once was a good time when we built all the great ships here, but that once time is our lost time now. That is our yesteryear. Raw tobacco from Virginia wandered next to ruby wine, moved by dirty puffing steam trains to factories of the line. Good old roads from Port Glasgow, Cooper barrels for the whiskey trade. All the world knew that the legend claimed the best ships were always Clyde made. There once was a good time when we built all the great ships here, but that one's time is our lost time now. That is our yesteryear. But that one's time is our lost time now. That is our yesteryear. But that one's time is our lost time now. That is our yesteryear. But that one's time is our lost time now. That is our yesteryear.
Good afternoon, Laura. Good afternoon, Lorraine. Good afternoon, Julia. I hope you all slept well. Not a great day weather-wise, but at least it's dry here. So, first things first, and as I have said since the beginning of this channel, I want the channel to be very much a two-way traffic between myself and people of Inverclyde, and that doesn't matter whether I am elected on Thursday or I am not elected on Thursday. that communication channel will always be here as far as I'm concerned. So if you've got anything that you want the general public to know, drop me an email and I'll mention it when I'm streaming. And the first thing I'd like to start with is the sad news that I got this morning regarding Mr. Graham Brooks, who is a candidate in Ward 4 along with myself and a few others. He is the Tory candidate, Mr. Graham Brooks. I don't know anything about him except what I read in his flyers, but I was saddened to hear that he took a heart attack. Whether that was this morning or yesterday some point, I don't know, but apparently he has suffered a heart attack and is hopefully in Inverclyde Royal as I speak, and I'm sure he is being well looked after. No doubt his family have been there for hours if it happened a while back. So sorry to hear that. So on behalf of myself and the whole of the pensioner party and all those in the live chat and those lurking beyond, be a good boy, Graham Brooks. Do as you're told by the nurses and doctors and get well as quickly as you possibly can. Not just for your own sake, but obviously for all those who care and love you. So look after yourself as best you can. Do as you're told, and no doubt you'll be discharged as soon as possible. And let us hope that we both get elected on Thursday. Having read Mr. Brooks's material, there are places where we can join forces and make things a bit better for everybody in Inverclyde. And the thing that I'm referring to, of course, is these so-called temporary cycle lanes that are causing massive traffic problems at peak hours in the morning and in the evening as people go back and forth. And he is opposed to, as I am, as is the pensioner party, and I'm sure there will be others. So we need to get Mr. Graham well, and should we both be elected, there is common ground there. And I'm sure the people who get stuck in these congested traffic jams will be happy to hear that these cycle lanes are indeed temporary. And obviously that was why the sitting council postponed deliberately a decision about it, to make sure that they either were voted back in again so that they can then make them permanent and extend them, and well, there's nothing you can do about it once they're elected. And that's why it's important, as far as I'm personally concerned, and I'm sure Mr. Brooks would agree, that we get as many independent people elected as possible. Although I represent the Pensioners Party, I am in a sense independent, because I do not belong, nor does the party belong, to the mainstream parties. So there'll be a dire need for a proper opposition on the council. And that's why I urge people to vote, if not for the Pensioners Party and myself, then independent candidates. And all I get when I'm on the street speaking to people is an absolute disgust and disappointment with everything that the SNP have done, not just recently, but across the time that they've been in power. And I'm not making that up, that's universal. Every single person I have spoken to has expressed the same view over and over and over again. And that's why it's crucial. The only way that that can be changed is for you, the voters, to trust in newer people. And then, despite my age, I consider myself to be a newer person and a newer representative voice. And the people I've spoken to can see that and hear it when I speak to them about what the Pensioner Party does stand for. It can be summarised in 2 words. Common sense is what we stand for. That is our philosophy. We're neither right wing nor left wing nor centre wing. We're for common sense, which is above and beyond ideologies. So, try and bear that in mind. I don't think there is much appetite out in Inverclyde for any of the mainstream parties if the people I've spoken to represent a majority. And the other thing that greatly saddens me, not simply because I'm standing as a candidate, but as someone who is concerned about politics, is how many people are so separated that they're not even willing to vote. And what I don't think they realise is that by not voting, the system itself counts that as though you're supporting the sitting government. That's how it works. That's how they read that. And if you don't spoil your vote properly, it's the same thing. They take that as you going along with whatever it is they're doing. I know it's unfair. Of course it's unfair. But that's how it works. They don't count a spoiled vote, of course, in the actual counting, but they take it. The SNP, the Tories as well, Lib Dems and Labour, they all take that as some form of support for what their actions are. Isn't right, but that's how it works. So if you're going to spoil your vote, do it properly. And by that is, you start with one corner and you draw a line to the bottom opposite corner, a big single line through it, and then one in the opposite direction, so you get a big cross through the names, and then you print none of the above. And that way they've got to count it as a spoiled vote. And that's important, to know how many people are completely dissatisfied. It should be a shot in the arm. The trouble is, I don't think enough people know how to spoil it properly so that it gets counted. If you don't do it the way I just described, it just gets discarded and counted as a silent support vote. That's why these things are important, whether you vote or don't vote, because they still become part of the overall picture that they present to you. It's a kind of cheat, really, but that's the system. So anyway, we have that, and I also have an announcement for an upcoming meeting. Now, the Inverclyde Dry Dock is sitting there ticking over, barely ticking over, and there is a campaign group, and they have asked for support in the past. They've been going around 5 years now, and the council have refused as a group. They have refused to publicly support the campaign, which again I think is completely wrong, and I would be bringing that up should I be elected, that the council as a single entity with some political authority should be officially behind this campaign. Now, why that hasn't happened, I don't know. That's for the future, should I be elected. But whether I am elected or not, I will still support the campaign and its efforts to get this position with Inverclyde completely reversed. Now, as part of the campaign, they're having an open meeting on Friday, the 13th of May at 4 o'clock in the Beacon Arts Guild Centre. I'll say that again. Friday the 13th at 4 o'clock in the Beacon Arts Centre, and you all know where that is, down the waterfront. So if you can make this open meeting, I highly urge you to come along. There is 2 speakers. A Dr. Stuart Ballantyne, Executive Chairman, Sea Transport Corporation. I've got the email over here on another screen. That's where I'm reading it from. I don't know that man at all, but I'll be interested to hear what he has to say. There will also be Professor Alf Baird, Director of the Maritime Research Group in Edinburgh, and I have heard this man speak before, and he's from Napier, Professor Alf Baird, and he really knows his stuff, and he has been a relentless campaigner, not simply for the Inverclyde facility, but all the docks dotted round, not just Scotland, but the whole of the UK. He's very much behind all of this. And he really does know his stuff. He should. He's a professor. He lectures on this. And I have heard him. He really is good. So if you can make this meeting on Friday the 13th of May at 4 o'clock, please come along and show your support for the campaign. The title of the meeting is, the focus of attention is on building the Scottish ferry fleet. Now by that, what they mean, of course, is not just Calmac, but that's included in it, building that whole fleet of boats to improve the quality of life for everyone, not just the islanders, of course, but should things ever return to where they once were, we do get visitors from all over the world, and they want to see these islands if possible, and obviously that will be completely dependent on the ferry services. Now, as I say, I've already heard this Professor Baird, and he wants the ferries to be doubled in number, and that's just for the west coast. That would bring enormous amounts of work to the Inverclyde dock facility. Now, believe it or not, this man has been hired by Nicola Sturgeon's administration in the past to present such a project, the feasibility and the details, all that stuff. You've heard all that before, right? So he was commissioned, this man, to provide them with such a plan, not just for the west coast, as I say, but for the east coast of the country. There's plenty of docks on the east coast too, and they're lying more or less fallow. And he did this. Now, things like that usually take at least a year to 18 months, sometimes longer. So he did that. Must have cost a pretty penny. Gave it to the Sturgeon and her minions, and they just completely rejected the whole thing. And the man was incredibly shocked, of course, because the money he was speaking about was colossal, that the potential income that can come, not just to the local area where the dock facility is, but that bleeds out into the general economy. And that would have been west and east coast. Now, he claims, of course, that it's all there waiting to happen, but it needs political will. But that political will, ladies and gentlemen, I would say it needs to start at the local level. The council have to be, as a group, have to be behind this campaign, and they're not. Now, that's good for the local economy. Think about it. If Inverclyde were back to the way it used to be, and this man claims that it can surpass what it used to be if organised and run properly, that's jobs right away. Permanent, long-term jobs. Mainly for men, which is badly needed here. Badly needed. But then there are other smaller companies that will feed off the dock with specialist parts and perhaps even specialist labour. I don't know. I think the possibilities are incredibly exciting. That would mean that Calmac would go from something like 20 odd boats to over 40, maybe a bit more. All that work being done here. Then there would be apprenticeships. As I say, these other companies would grow around it, feeding them in specialist materials and parts. Real economy, not pretend. So that's what's possible if we can get this political support. And it's outrageous that we have to campaign for this kind of support. You would have thought, would you not, that a political party that claims to be only interested in the well-being of Scottish people would not support such a campaign. And when they had the plans in front of them, why would they reject them? Why would they pay this man, this professor, a handful of money, and it would be a big handful of money, of public money, your money, my money, right? And then simply dismiss it out of hand. And that was the way he put it. It was just dismissed out of hand, and they never provided him a reason. And he was expecting it. It must be part of the protocol when you do a commission like that. That the person that you hand your finished work to will then come back to you and say, well, no, we're not doing it because of A, B, and C. But he got nothing. So he has no idea why this plan, and it was a detailed plan that he provided, why it was simply tossed away. It was so detailed that it wasn't just how to develop the dock. It wasn't at the Inverclyde dock. It was a Leith dock that he'd been asked to look at, a whole facility over there at Leith. Not only did he have all the details about how to get structurally that facility up and running, it wasn't just that. There was a finance package put in there as well in terms of cost and potential profit. And then on top of all of that, they actually had a person who was willing at that stage in the game to take out a 30-year lease, which is apparently the way it's done. So they had an operator. They had the financial package, which means they must have been talking to the commercial banks. And a detailed plan is how to get the facilities with all the mechanical stuff that they need. And it was dismissed like that. And no reason given. And as I say, that's why I'm urging you to come along to this meeting if you can, because they have obviously, and he did touch on it when I listened to the video that I was sent, they've obviously got a detailed plan about how to get the ferry services not just up and running but improved for the future. And he's got all the sources. There's apparently a Scot who's an expert in designing ferries who lives in Australia, and according to Professor Baird, you could buy one off the shelf, a design, and then you can have it tweaked. It's all there, folks. It just needs political will. And that political will has to start at the council. There has to be a formal declaration given out by the council in support of this campaign. There has to be it. It has to exist, has to go through the Telegraph so that you, the potential benefit from this, see it and you know it exists. And then you're better able to put pressure on those above. But this is outrageous. There should be no need for any of this. But it was a treacherous way, apparently it was all sold off in the first place, which had nothing to do with Edinburgh, it was everything to do with Westminster. This is when Thatcher was in power. So apparently what happened was that they sold not just the facility itself, but they sold the land that it's sitting on, and all the land that it originally occupied and owned, that was sold as well. And the rights to police and survey the river itself, actually responsible for the traffic that occurs on the estuary of the Clyde, is all sold off. And that happened throughout all the docks, not just in Scotland but in England and Wales. This is the way Thatcher sold it all off. Now it happens that it's an offshore hedge fund that owns it, and they're not interested in development, they're interested in sucking immediate profits. That's what they're in business for. They're very aggressive in their methods, and they have no connection to any locality. I needed a pause there. So, as I say, if you could make that meeting, that would be terrific. That it's outrageous that there should be a campaign in the first place, you know, and it is outrageous. So anyway, please always remember that this channel is for your benefit, and that means if you've got anything that you wish to share with the community, send me an email and I'll do my best to bring it to everyone's attention. I just thought, for those who might not have seen this, I thought I'd like to play the official launch to the campaign. It's just a very short video. That's George Monroe, the Telegraph photographer. That's me, of course. This is the party.
And what's your own name?
John Davison.
Fab. Tell me a bit about the party today.
The party was established last year, the 20th of August. I am the founder and leader. We represent not just pensioners. You don't have to be a pensioner to be a member of the party. And we are giving an official voice to pensioners because they need it.
Sounds good. And what are you doing today then?
This is a launch for and at the same time it is symbolising Easter, the proper meaning of Easter. 3 balloons symbolising God the Father, the Son and the Holy Ghost. And as they rise in the air, they symbolise the resurrection come Sunday.
Ah, there you go. So there's 2 meanings to your balloon launch today then, yes?
Yeah, exactly.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Okay.
So whenever you're ready.
So, do you want me just to let them go in?
Yeah,
You ready, son?
Yeah.
I'll
See how good it is here. Typical.
Oh God, I don't want to go that way.
It's quite windy.
No. Let's see what happens.
There you go.
And off they go.
Oh, that's perfect.
Wonder where they'll end up. Who knows?
Who whoever finds that logo wins a prize.
Oh, okay, how do they get that? Do they contact
They bring it back to the office.
Bring it back to the telegraph office, okay.
And it's gone. I hope it's not. There it is.
Oh, there you go. Thank you.
So there you go. That was the balloon launch. Sansom was saying, it sounds like a great idea, providing government doesn't get involved and ruin it, just as they do with everything else they touch. Our governments are in the universe of the Midas touch. That's very, very true, Sansom. No, the idea is that the government of the day would provide the capital, and private companies would then come in and fit the place out and all that, overseen by some kind of manager of the facility. You could appoint somebody like Professor Baird, I expect, who is the expert, and then the leaks would go out. Apparently this is the common practice all over the world apart from here, and that person comes in, they get the lease, which they pay for, of course, and then they operate it. They become effectively the operator, and they take their profits accordingly, and that's how it operates. And that would not just be for repairs, but that would be in terms of building new boats to expand the ferry service. And that's why this Professor Baird, he has this contact in Australia, who is a worldwide renowned expert in ferry design, and he is constantly employed by various governments throughout the world, big and small, a lot of them smallish countries. So this is his field of expertise, designing the construction of ferry. So it's not just a hole in the wall operation, this whole idea and whole plan, and that's how it would finish up. Someone would then pay for a license, and they had a man, apparently, who represented some kind of corporation, and not financial corporation, but he was himself was an expert in running ferries, and they just turned it down almost willy-nilly. But it needs local support from the local council, and that is what is one of the many things that I would be working towards should I get elected on Thursday, because it is vitally important to bring proper, when I say proper, I mean permanent, long lasting jobs that pay sufficient wages for a man to support a family, as it used to. And then that would gradually seep outward into the rest of Inverclyde, because it would bring people with money who want to make more money. That's how you bring jobs. Politicians can't create jobs directly. They can only hope, and in the idea that they put forward is good enough to make the place attractive for those who have the money and desire and know how to run a business to come. The only reason shipbuilding was ever here, folks, remember, is because we have the River Clyde. That's what brought the people with the money. And the fact that men had been building boats for hundreds of years here on the Clyde for fishing. That's why they came. And that's where the Inverclyde dry dock comes in. The facility is already there. It already did work. But because of the type of ownership that it's now under, it's being deliberately ignored in favour of Merseyside. That is the claim of the campaign group. Now that's fine for the folk down in Mersey, and I wouldn't grudge them that. But that doesn't help us here. We need to wrestle this dock and any other Scottish dock that's under their control. We need to get that out of them. We need to get that away from them. That needs to come back into public ownership, and that requires Edinburgh, and they're refusing. So explain that. Ask that of your SNP candidate. Why is the SNP so-called government not supporting this campaign and pushing Westminster? And that would help right round the coastline, both sides. Helps everybody. Everybody gains. There is no loser here. It's very, very important, this. This is above and beyond party politics. Or at least it should be. That's my view on it. Anyway, so I hope and plead with you, regardless of the weather, that no doubt be coming down with rain. It usually does in Poland. But do your best to vote. And obviously, if you're in Ward 4, I'd prefer if you voted for me. But at least vote. And if you can't give me your first vote, consider me for your second choice. If you've got to be loyal to some party or other. First vote would be the biggest help. But the second vote would also be an enormous help. And I'll take either at this point. But as I've always said, and I said it to everyone I met on the street, if you are so sick and tired, disgusted and turned off by the present lot, then there is only one way to change it. And that's to vote for someone else, someone new, someone fresh. And I consider myself both of those things, despite my age. Because if you don't vote, it won't change. They'll just get back in and nothing will move forward. So that doesn't help just by simply saying, no, I'm not voting. And that's why it's so important for you to vote. If you are so sick to the back teeth, as I know many of you are, then the only way to get rid of that is to vote for independent candidates, such as myself and others. They're in every ward, the independents. They've got people everywhere, which is terrific news. The only stitch up is the one we all know about, Inverclyde Central, where there are 3 seats and strangely only 3 candidates. So if I am elected as a councillor, I will be constantly asking each one of them before they say a word, who is it exactly they're speaking on behalf of. And the answer, as far as I'm concerned, is they're speaking on behalf of no one, because no one had the chance to vote either for or against them. 3 people decided that all those able and legal to vote won't get to do that. They don't have a say. Now, there's nothing irregular. This is part of the rules, but it shows you that the rules need to be changed. And they do, when they contain such irregularities, shall we say. It's got a bad taste to it. And that's my view, and I'm sure that now you know. And I know the Telegraph did do a piece on it. I just want you to know that it is a concern of mine that that is part of the rules. I think it's politically unacceptable. Now, had I known that before the campaign had started officially, I wouldn't have changed the ward I was standing in. I wouldn't go for that ward, knowing that there was the 3 of them. That was it. There was no opposition. Because the political party that I represent, we consider it a principle that if you stand in a council election, you should live in the ward that you're going to represent. That's a principle of the party and of my own anyway. So I wouldn't have then put myself forward as a 4th candidate just to make sure that there was a vote taking place. My principle of not doing that prevented the idea of it happening. Because I was asked, why didn't you stand in there, John? There's only 3 of them. You get a better chance. And that would cause an election. And all of that's true. But my principle came first. It's not right. Say I'd got in, what do I know about that ward? Well, not very much, because I don't live there. So I'm taking on a bigger challenge by standing in the ward that I live in, Ward 4. But it is a principle of mine that that's what should happen. So I take my chances, and perhaps with a little help from the divine creator, I just might get elected. Who knows? It's entirely in your hands, folks. Please don't just ignore the vote and don't go. That's the worst possibility. it doesn't help anyone. It really doesn't, because it'll never change if you don't vote. That's the only way it'll ever possibly change. So I urge you, unless for good medical reasons or ailment reasons you can't do it physically, you know, I hope you've used the postal vote. And we'll see how it all turns out on Friday. So let me just remind you again of what you may or may not have had through your letterbox. This is my flyer. Now, due to various circumstances, the other party members were unable to assist in this job, so you may not have got one, but it wasn't for the want of trying, I can assure you. And my 3 points remain. I want the charges on the garden rubbish collection to be removed. I'm told it's £31 presently, but it will always go up. We know this. And the council tax already has gone up by almost 2%. So that's another increase, on to all the increases that we're all feeling, sorely feeling them, when we go to buy groceries. The money is not going anywhere near as far as it once went a month ago. And we've got all these huge charges coming our way via gas and electricity. I dread to think what the winter's going to be. There'll be people in this area, definitely will be people in this area who will be deciding whether they can afford to eat something or try and heat the house in some way, or heat themselves somehow. That's definitely on the cards. Some of the increases I've heard are horrendous as it is, and these companies are threatening even more come the autumn. We don't need this tax. It shouldn't be there. It's an extra tax. It has to go. And I will not accept the fact, oh, it's only a couple of months during the summer. That's neither here nor there. That actually makes it worse. Because it's a tax then that you can only get given if you have any bit of garden, front or rear. If you live up a high flat, this doesn't affect you. That makes it a targeted tax. Someone is paying more tax than somebody else simply because they've got a bit of a garden. It's completely unacceptable. Should never have been there in the first place. But that's typical SNP and the way these people think. Completely unacceptable. So that's one of my platforms, to get rid of that. And again, I haven't met a single person who pays it and thinks it's a great idea. Because they don't. They pay it because they're frightened that they're going to get into trouble if they don't pay it. That they're going to be taken to the sheriff court over it. And that's the likelihood that would happen. That it would accrue. You know, if you put your bin out, trying to get it collected, or say you paid it once and said, oh, sod that, I'm not going to pay it again. It's outrageous. It's completely outrageous. And then it adds to the bureaucracy. Somebody's going to have to take care of the paperwork that it produces. That means somebody in the council is now probably on a split duty. The second one that's on there, of course, is either abolish or greatly reduce the charges for removing unwanted household goods, and that affects every household. Sooner or later you've got a chair or a table or something or other that you want rid of. The charges are astronomical for that. And I am told, because I have not used this service, but I am told it takes forever for the men to turn up and take the things away. So obviously that needs to have a look at how do we improve that service. What is causing the bottleneck and this long delay before any action takes place? Well, I haven't an answer for you because I don't know where the bottleneck's occurring and why. But that needs to be sorted to improve that service. That is what it's meant to be, a service. So the charges for it need to come way down. It's got so bad that there's men out there with their own van doing the same job and making a living, and they're charging less. Something wrong, folks. Something far wrong. And then the very last one that's on there, which is one that very few people have heard, and that is they have invented a tax to be applied on gravestones. If you have an existing gravestone and you wish to change any factor of it, either the stone itself or what's written on it, you will employ a stonemason and he will do the job for you. But if you do that this year, the council will demand £150 from you. It has been applied a long many years ago, secretly. And I know this personally because I have now paid this tax twice. Many years ago when it was £30, and last year when it was £150. And I want that removed. And you will only find this out, well, not now because I'm telling you, obviously, but you would normally only find this out when you're in the process of arranging a funeral. And when you're in that state, as I'm sure many of you already know, you're in no fit condition to be questioning or even looking at that kind of thing on a bill. You'll just pay it without thought. It's insidious, whoever created this one, and it needs to go as quickly as possible. And that's why it's on the flyer. That particular one affects everyone who has a grave or will buy a grave in the future. Sooner or later you'll get caught up on that tax. That's why it's there, to bring attention to it. So I can do my best to have these things changed, and with the help of independents, I'm sure I will be able to do that. So anyway, enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I hope Mr. Brooks gets well as quickly as possible and gets home. These days, of course, they don't keep anyone in the hospital as soon as they're ready, they get sent home. So he might be out in a couple of days, I don't know. And of course he'll get better quicker when he's at home. So we wish him well, and let us hope that we both get elected come Thursday. So I will bring on the outro music and thank everyone in the chat for coming along this afternoon. And thank everybody out there, whoever they may be, for giving your time and your attention. Always appreciated. I've left my email address and the website address in the what's called the description box below. So when the stream is put up on the channel, if you wish to get in touch, please use the email address that I have provided, and I will hopefully speak to you all next Sunday again. So again, I will say adios, au revoir, cheerio, and until next Sunday, bye for now. I'll be at the count, of course.
Silently the snow falls, paints a winter scene, swiftly spreads the dark rim, hides a fading autumn green. Moonbeams brush the dark wood, conjure friendships dear to me. Lightly now the breeze flows, disturbing more than just the leaves. But life's much more than we can know. We are one small glow in the eternal flow. Patiently the love grows, lifts the weary heart. Gently now she holds me, melts two worlds once apart. Moonbeams brush the dark wood, usher dreams of you and me. Softly then the breeze flows, disturbing more than just the trees. But love's much more than we can know. We are one small glow in the eternal flow. Melodies of long ago, songs of innocence, harmonies to soothe the soul, have some consequence. Moonbeams brush the dark wood, awakening Silently the snow falls, bringing winter symphony. But we're much more than we can know. We are one small glow in the eternal flow. But life's much more than we can know. We are one small glow in the eternal flow.